After 4 years of brutal fighting, the Ottoman Empire signed the Armistice of Mudros in October 1918. This marked their defeat in the Great War. The victorious Allied powers made themselves comfortable in the Ottoman capital of Constantinople, effectively bringing the Sultan and the remnants of the Ottoman state machinery under their control. Then, in 1920, the Treaty of Sèvres was drafted, sealing the fate of the Ottoman Empire. In accordance with the treaty, the empire was forced to cede all of their territories south of Anatolia. The Anatolian heartland was also carved up by the Allied powers. In the west, East Thrace and Smyrna were effectively brought under Greek control. The Turkish Straits, a term which collectively refers to the Bosphorus Strait and the Dardanelles, such the Çanakkale Strait, would be internationalized. Italy was given a sphere of influence in the southwest, while France was given a sphere of influence in southeastern Anatolia. In the east, a large chunk of eastern Anatolia was to be annexed into the newly established Armenian state. There was also talk of establishing a Kurdish state in the region. The remaining territory would form an Ottoman rump state. Despite the harsh nature of the terms, the Ottoman Empire signed the treaty, just like the other vanquished Central Powers. In the interior of Anatolia, a nationalist movement rose to represent the Turks of Anatolia and Thrace, in opposition to both the Entente powers and the Ottoman government in Constantinople. This movement was led by a young general who went by the name of Mustafa Kemal Pasha, the hero of Gallipoli. When he arrived in Constantinople in 1918, he was dismayed by the presence of Entente troops in the city. Mustafa Kemal realized he could not organize the nationalists in the capital. Therefore, he landed in the Anatolian city of Samsun with his personal staff on the 19th of May 1919. Most Turks consider this date as the starting date of the Turkish War of Independence. In Anatolia, Mustafa Kemal Pasha began to rally support for a resistance movement, holding congresses in Erzurum and Sivas. There, the nationalist movement and its objectives were consolidated, with Mustafa Kemal emerging as the movement's leader. Although the Ottoman government initially attempted to suppress the nationalists by giving orders for Mustafa Kemal's arrest, the military commander given the order, Kazım Karabekir, refused to carry it out and backed the resistance instead. This led to the Sultan agreeing to compromise, resulting in the general elections of 1919. Although the parliament was largely dominated by Mustafa Kemal Pasha's Anadolu ve Rumeli Mudafa-i Hukuk Cemiyeti, the assembly's support for the Misak-i Milli, or the National Pact, a manifesto which outlined the objectives of the nationalists, led to the Entente power dissolving it. In response, the nationalists formed the Türkiye Büyük Millet Meclisi, or the Grand National Assembly in Ankara on the 23rd of April 1920. This effectively resulted in the establishment of a parallel government, with Mustafa Kemal as its head. Then, when the Constantinople government signed the Treaty of Sèvres on the 11th of August 1920, the nationalists rejected the treaty and called for a national struggle against the occupiers. The Turks faced enemies from three fronts who seek to bring Mustafa Kemal to heel. In the east, the newly formed Armenian state had been given control over a significant portion of eastern Anatolia. According to them, these regions were promised to them by US President Wilson, a promise which was reiterated in the Treaty of Sèvres. On the other hand, the Ankara government considered the eastern regions of Kars, Ardahan, Batum, and Nakhchivan to be part of the envisioned Turkish state. This led to skirmishes between the Turks and the Armenians, which escalated into a war in September 1920. Under the leadership of General Kazım Karabekir, the nationalist forces launched a successful offensive, resulting in the Ankara government regaining control over eastern Anatolia. At the same time, the Bolsheviks captured Armenia and declared a Soviet republic in its place. Despite the historic enmity that existed between Russia and Turkey, the two revolutionary movements cooperated with each other against a common enemy, the Entente powers. The Bolsheviks provided the nationalists with financial and military supplies for their struggle. In the end, the Treaty of Kars was signed in October 1921, delineating the borders between Turkey and the three Transcaucasian Soviet republics of Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia, although eastern Anatolia came under Ankara's control. Batum and Nakhchivan became autonomous republics within the Georgian SSR and the Azerbaijani SSR. In the south, the French were given influence in southern Anatolia in accordance with the Treaty of Sèvres. There was talk of the region of Cilicia becoming an Armenian state under French protection. This angered many Turks, provoking resistance against occupation. As the year 1920 progressed, Paris's position in Cilicia further weakened. This then resulted in the signing of the Treaty of Ankara in October 1921, which effectively ended hostilities between France and the Ankara government. Although the Ankara government was successful in pushing the French out of Anatolia, it failed to gain control over the regions of Iskenderun and Aleppo, territories claimed by the nationalists. This would become a contentious issue between France and Turkey later on. With the victory secured on the eastern and southern fronts, Mustafa Kemal faced one major threat from the west, Greece. Ever since independence in 1830, Greek leaders had long sought to form a Greater Greece, including eastern Thrace, western Anatolia and Constantinople. For them, the Allied victory in the Great War provided them an opportunity to achieve their objectives. Therefore, in the aftermath of the armistice of Mudros, Greek troops occupied the Anatolian city of Smyrna in May 1919. In the summer and autumn of 1920, Athens further expanded in East Thrace and western Anatolia, hoping to force the nationalists to surrender. Mustafa Kemal, realizing the need for a disciplined army, dissolved the Kuvayi Milliye and replaced it with a regular army. This decision proved fruitful in 1921 when the nationalists under Ismet Pasha defeated the Greeks in the two battles over the central Anatolian city of İnönü. Despite the defeats, Athens continued its offensive into central Anatolia, reaching the Sakarya River. This effectively meant the Greeks were on the verge of capturing Ankara. Nevertheless, the nationalists did not relent and eventually emerged victorious in the battle. With the culmination of the Battle of the Sakarya in September 1921, the war entered a stalemate. The British and the rest of the Entente powers were no longer enthusiastic about the Greek war effort, and Athens faced an economic crisis. The nationalists, on the other hand, used the stalemate to build up their forces to launch an offensive. Then, in August 1922, Mustafa Kemal Pasha gave the order to launch the Great Offensive. This culminated in the raising of the Turkish banner over Izmir on the 9th of September 1922. As a result, Greece was forced to withdraw its troops from Anatolia and give up its irredentist dreams. With the swift victory achieved over the Greeks, Mustafa Kemal set his sights on regaining control over the Turkish Straits. With the nationalists' advance towards Constantinople seeming imminent, there was fear of war breaking out between the British and the Turks. Many in the UK and its dominions were unwilling to fight another war, resulting in the armistice of Mundanya on the 11th of October 1922. With this, the Turkish War of Independence came to an effective end. Once again, just 2 years after the drafting of the Treaty of Sèvres, the Turks and the Entente again returned back to the negotiating table. However, the situation was starkly different this time. First, the Turks were not represented by a sultan of a vanquished empire. Rather, they were represented by a dynamic leader of a victorious republic. Second, the Entente were no longer in a position to dictate terms in their favor. Thus, the Treaty of Lausanne was drafted. In accordance with the treaty, Anatolia and Eastern Thrace would be united under a sovereign Turkish republic. In that sense, it was a major victory for the nationalists. However, Ankara was also forced to give up their claims over most of the Aegean islands and accept the demilitarization of the Turkish Straits. The territories of Mosul, Aleppo, and Iskenderun, claimed by the Turks, were not resolved by the treaty, pushing way for future disputes. Nevertheless, the Ankara government and the Entente powers signed the treaty on the 24th of July 1923. Athens and Ankara then also agreed to a population exchange between them. Greeks and other Orthodox Christians migrated to Greece, while Turks and other Muslims migrated to Turkey. Then, on the 29th of October 1923, the Republic of Turkey was proclaimed into existence, with Mustafa Kemal Pasha as the nation's founding president. With the formation of a unitary republican state centered in Ankara, the sole representative of the Turkish nation, the national struggle that started with Mustafa Kemal's arrival in Samsun in 1919 came to an end. Thanks for watching the video. If you wish to watch something related to Turkey, you can click on the video on the left, which is about Turkey's accession to NATO. But if you would wish to watch something else, you can click on the video on the right, which is about the role of vodka in the fall of the USSR.